chtěl bych představit našeho vzácného hosta, kterým je pan profesor Roberto Salvador de Valle z Univerzity Deusto v Bilbau. On byl vlastně na začátku tím, který nás inspiroval, že můžeme uvažovat trošičku jinak o strategickém plánování, že můžeme mnohem více zapojit a mnohem více důvěřovat partnerům, aby jsme se snažili opravdu o společnou práci a nejenom o naši vlastní strategii. A ve své prezentaci bych se hlavně zaměřil na to, jakým způsobem se v Bilbau daří naplňovat ty strategie a jakým způsobem se udržuje ta pozornost a zájem těch lidí, aby neskončilo jenom u krásné strategie nebo nějaké hezké architektonické realizace. Roberto, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor and the rest of the team in the municipality of Brno. My name is Roberto Salvador. I come from the city of Bilbao, from the University of Deusto. I am in charge of the Deusto Cities Lab chair, that it's a research and applied research chair in the University of Deusto in the city of Bilbao and in all the Basque Country. It's in a partnership between all the public institutions and the private and non-profit sector in our community, focused on the future of the cities. How many people heard to me 19 months ago speaking on Bilbao in the conference hall? Okay, so a little amount of people. Okay, so it's not to be, and I remember, it's going to be so in a presentation, but I have only 20 minutes to fulfill all the introductions, so I have to go very fast and only trying to undertake some of the main ideas that I want to share with you this afternoon. So Bilbao, it's in a city that it's very similar to Brno from the point of view of inhabitants. The metropolitan area has 1 million, but the municipality has only 350,000 people. The density is very high because it's like in a hole between among the hills that are there, and 60% of the municipal land, it's natural space. It's preserved areas, no for being constructed, or plenty of houses and so. This is other kind of point of view from the city, considering all the metropolitan area with these 13 municipalities. Okay, and this is the point of view that the people that we believe in Bilbao, we have. That it's the map of the world, no? With the city of Bilbao in the center, and the rest of the different geographical areas in the world, in the surroundings. No? Okay. I spoke about 19 months ago. I spoke about the Bilbao city in 70s. After 40 years with Franco's period, after 40 years with the dictatorship, and in a tremendous scheme of different areas, with the, from the ecological dimension, with the pollution of all the areas, the banks of the river, plenty of industrial and port activities, the traffic collapse, all the transport was private, and the desarrollism, the speculation in housing and the rest of infrastructures. From the economic perspective, an industrial declining process, traditional shopping sector collapse, low technological economy, and no tourism because the presence of the violence from ETA and also from the Spanish government. From the social perspective, illegal and Catholic non-profit sector, because the dictatorship forbid everything, every activity, every social and cultural initiative. The charity and paternalism in the social services, public and private health system, but in a very declining process, and the public social housing that was lost in this period after the main experience in the beginning of the 20th century. The Basque culture and language was forbidden, non-public Basque university in all Basque country, all classic museums near to be closed, and the classic culture facilities and organizations kept by the social and the civil society, but no with the helping process from the institutions. And perhaps the basis of all city, the Franco's dictatorship, centralism, the Spanish centralism, non-regional taxes, and the political violence. So in this scenario, the alternative was to do or to die, no more. So after that, and finishing the process of the 80s, and in the beginning of the 80s, the problem was reinforcing with the critical point of the collapse of the traditional economy sectors, with the floods that cover all the city in 1983, and perhaps the worst period of the violence, the political violence with ETA and the non-official estatal violent organization that was GAL, joined to the Ministry of Interior. So, in that point, the new democratic institutions are starting to transform the city. And I think that in the history, in the storytelling of the city, in all places they are undertaking that the main issue has been the Guggenheim Museum. And 19 months ago, I commented that the Guggenheim Museum, in my opinion, is only the cherry on the cake. And when the other leaders of the different municipalities come from the rest of the world visiting Bilbao, one of the main mistakes that they imply in their own cities is that they consider that the only thing that they need is in a museum to improve in the cities. And the miracle of the city is going to be around the museum. And it's just the opposite. Perhaps the main issue, or the main successful issue in the transformation of Bilbao has been the transversal governance for sustainable urban development, with key factors, two key factors. First, the transversal governance. The transversal governance. That means that you have to get an equilibrium between all the scopes, all the habits of the city. Perhaps you have several strongs. You have several things that are going to be very positive and are the basis for a very positive future in your own city. But you have to get the equilibrium between culture, economy, society, and ecology. Perhaps you have several examples in the world that you have in a very successful economy systems in the cities, but with the lack of democracy, or with the lack of social equilibrium, and with an equity between or among people. Or you have an economic successful project, but with a tremendous ecological and environmental impact in the city and in the natural spaces that are in the surroundings. So the first idea that I have to share with you is that a city has to promote a transversal governance. It's so important, the health system, that the strategic intelligence scopes that you are going to develop in economic fields. Or it's so important, the libraries, that, for example, the educational system, or that the new companies that you are able to attract to the city. So the main issue is trying to get in a sustainable model. In this part, I am going to go very fast, because it's only trying to argue in what way Bilbao has fulfilled this equilibrated system, combining the 4 different development areas, and also the governance, the transsectorial governance that I am going to add it in the final step. In the ecological approach, the river was in a critical point, because it was like the main avenue in all metropolitan area. But also the banks of the river, the quality of water and the pollution, reduce the pollution, and also to recuperate the banks of the river. So the second element was to move the port to the external side, leaving a lot of space, 30 kilometers of the banks of the river, to be used by the city. The third element was to promote public facilities and transport. And the metro has been a strategic point, reducing the presence of more than 90 million cars on streets and motorways by year. So it means that combining with the tram and the public buses and the rest of public services and has facilitated the transport. And also to preserve the common space and the green ring, that it's spread around all the city, not only in the center, also in the peripheries, because it's very important to recuperate all the city together. Bilbao is now in a photo. It's now in a pleasant place to offer to the visitants. It's in a qualified city to be lived by the people that we are. So it means that the common spaces have to be preserved in all corners of the city. The distance between the peripheries and the center side has to be reduced. Second, from the economic point of view, it's very important to preserve the SMA business leaders, because perhaps you can get some multinational companies that are going to appear for a period in your city if you are cheaper in the labor force or you have other kind of advantages. But the people that are going to preserve the local economy are the local leaders, the local economic leaders. In the case of Bilbao, 90% of economic leaders are joined to small, medium-sized companies. And most that 70% of the employment is created by these kind of companies. So it has been in a very high life protagonism in the process. Also the workers and the trade unions that have been present around, through all the 40 years. The third element is the shopping sector. If you have an alive shopping sector in all neighborhoods, not only in the central side of the city, also you are going to preserve the life of the city. The streets, plenty of taverns, restaurants, but also with little shops that are joining the community. The third element that it's very important in this economic approach, in the economic development, is the technology and internship, and the presence of the Parque of Tecnológico of Vizcaya from the very beginning, and the rest of facilities and initiatives that we have provoked in these 40 years. Also, the introduction of the new economies, like MICE and tourism, if the violence has disappeared, because we have 7 years without ETA, and this year has finally destroyed or has disappeared in the political scenario in the Basque Country. Now we are more than 3 million people coming by year to the Basque Country, and most of them to the city of Bilbao. So to become from the traditional sectors, fishing and shipping yard, to the Congress Hall or other kind of changes like the new music festivals and so, have been a very important transformation in the economic development. But also we need a social development, and the importance of the non-profit sector, joining all the NGO organizations in only one platform, that it's going to have a very important and strong leadership in the community to discuss with the institutions, with the public sector, and also with the private sector, discussing about the problems that we have and considering all the enormous distance that are between all people. Second, introducing the back system of income guarantee, that it's not exactly a universal rent, but has been the most near project that we have had in Europe to the universal rent. And from, you can see, more than 20 years old, trying to preserve all the social guarantee for the people that are with low rents, or they have been in an employee, or they have been with a lot of different programs, or for the immigrants. We have no stop this kind of help for immigrants in the last 10 years, although the crisis. Also, it's important to complete with the Basque health system. I have seen that in Brno, it's going to be one of the key issues. But from the very beginning, from the 80s, the public health public service has been very strategic in the development of the city and also of the Basque country. And the public social housing. So other point in agreement with the Brno's plan. The importance of the public social housing, but also introducing the design, introducing new ways to create new ghettos for the people that they have less capacity to be introduced in the social housing networks. No, trying to improve in the common life in the city with no very high differences between the normal houses and this kind of social projects. And in the top of the project, to recuperate the Basque identity, heritage, and museums, our own language, Basque language, and also all the traditions, the rural sports and music and instruments and so. Also trying to recuperate all the museums that we have and some new ones. To establish the Basque education system, fulfilling all the levels of the education with the different initiatives, profit, non-profit, and public one, and also in the vocational training, that it's one of the most important initiatives that the Basque country has developed in the last 40 years. And also the university system, in this moment with 4 universities in the city of Bilbao, but now with the municipality trying to attract 2 other universities coming from the rest of the world to complete a knowledge and universitarian city inside. You have more than 40,000 students in the city, so you have a very potentiality in this topic to have a presence in the European scenario. But also the Guggenheim Museum has a leadership in the process. The cherry on the cake, but also for the cultural development approach, has two main issues to be considered. First, Guggenheim Museum itself. It has been very interesting for developing other kind of cultural initiatives in the city. The building, but also the content. To see today Vasconcelos and tomorrow Kiefer, and the next week other kind of artists in Bilbao, it's like a privilege for us. But also in a second way, the contra scenario against the Guggenheim Museum. When the project started, 85% of the citizenship was against the museum. Against the museum. Nowadays, the people that are against has reduced to 10%. So it means that sometimes also the people could take some decisions that it's not so successful, it could be, or are not empowered, or they have lack of information, or we have to improve the discussions. But I think that the second issue, considering the Guggenheim Museum, is that the contra projects have been so interested that the Guggenheim itself. All the alternative cultural expressions that have developed in these 40 years, because they consider that this was like a McDonaldization of the Basque culture in the city. And in the way that the impact of the Guggenheim has been like a revolution in the city, has removed everything. But the most important thing is now in the top, also the cultural creative industries that have been very important. Perhaps the most important thing is in the base. The transversal approach is only try to equilibrate the city, but we need the presence of the 4 different sectors in the leadership of the city. And this is in a transsectoral approach. We need to join together institutions, private sector, non-profit sector, and the anonymous citizenship. Most of 80% of people are now taking part in the political parties, in the world trade unions. There are no actionists or members of the private companies. There are no members of the non-profit sector. We have a lot of people in Europe that they are now taking part in the organized society. So we have to include in the process. We have to include to this kind of people in the dialogue. And Bilbao has completed this fourth element, first because we have developed a democrat public bodies. And I undertake this aspect because we are in a very risky situation in Europe. The lack of democracy or the process of declining the democratic systems in Europe, it's one element that has to be a main worry in our system. And from the cities, I think that it's a key issue. Second, it has been the self-government. The Basque government has given in the beginning of the democracy a statute of autonomy that is having a key document and a key issue and a key instrument to develop all self-decisions. Joined to this one, the third element has been the fiscal tax self-government. We have the capacity to collect all the taxes in the Basque Country. So it means that the money is very near to the people. And the influence from people in the politics, it's very high. And in the way that the budgets are distributed, also have joined with the self-government criteria. And finally, the transsectoral governance from 1.0 to 4.0, in the way that the local institutions and all sectors have tried to improve, first, information to get transparency. Second, communication to get confidence. Third, co-create to get joint responsibility. And four, to improve positive experiences to get more compliance from the society, from the rest of sectors in the projects that we have. Perhaps I think that this is the most important issue in the development of a strategic planning for a city. The transversal approach, considering the equilibrium of the scopes, and second, the transsectorial approach, considering the presence and the role of the different sectors in the developing process of the city. Finishing. And what about the future? I think that most of the cities in the world, or at least in the Western world, we are sharing more or less the same problems. I am going to try to reduce to 20 that are joined to the previous scheme. So I think that we have the problem of the limited and consolidated spaces. We cannot use more space. The climate change and the ecological impact, it's obligated to the cities to consider that the built space is enough to be reused. Second, the mobility. In the way that the mobility is going to need, we have to join mobility with ecology and to deep in this kind of dialogue. Connectivity. We have to introduce the technology in favor of the connectivity between the people, centers and peripheries, and with the rest of the world. And finally, centers and peripheries. Sometimes we have to give the central leadership to one of the peripheries. We have to deconcentrate more the projects. We have to improve the community development and giving more opportunities to bottom-up initiatives. Second, in the economic development, we have to improve more added value economies. We have to preserve the economies of proximity, like these shopping areas in the neighborhoods and so, the intangible economies, and also the creativeness, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And these are 4 scopes that Bilbao has developed with several initiatives. Third, from the social perspective, we have the problem of aging, and I think that it's a common problem in at least in half of the world. No? That I think that it's not even a problem, it's an opportunity. Basque Country is the second region in the world in the life expectancy, after a region that it's in Japan. So I think that it's not even a problem, because it means that the social services, the public health, and the health system, and so, and our way of understanding the gastronomy and food, it's in a positive aspect. So we have to preserve, and we have to preserve the life of expectancy of life. But I think that we have the problem of rejuvenated. We have to attract more young people. We have to keep in the best way to the young people that they live with us. And also connected with the second one, we have to get more dialogue with the immigrants that they are coming, because also they are an opportunity. They are not in a problem. They are the opportunity to rejuvenate our own societies and to open mind to our own Basque identity. Third, we are going to have a big problem with the employee-occupied unemployed society. We have 8–10% of people in unemployment. It has been bigger in the previous decade. But the problem is that some of them are not to work again. And we have to decide in a social system, trying to have people occupied, people employed, and people unemployed. So we have to go on with the universal rent and other kind of strategies to complete this scenario. And last, the equitable and unequal society, considering all the different social groups that have to be considered in the city. So there are several initiatives that are joined to this third social development. In the fourth one, the main issue that we have is in what way the Basque identity has to be preserved in a global war. Second, in what way the knowledge and wise city has to be worked. Third, in what way we can promote the cultural attractiveness for the city. And finally, in what way we can promote more cultural new audiences. And we are developing several strategies. For example, it's very interesting that the Basque language is the 60 in the rank of the most spoken languages in internet. And we are only 800,000 people speaking Basque language. So it means that we are using internet. Because you know that we are 7,000 languages in the world. So it means that to be the 60s, the 61 has to be in a very social and common effort. And also, for example, introducing some traditional instruments and so within a musician like this one, so that after knowing that was some Basque instruments, it has to be included in the performances. Introducing all the research centers, university, tech centers, and so all together in a Basque research network to improve this knowledge and wise cities. Also trying to complete the cultural attractiveness of the city, combining several elements, and also promoting new audiences within city. And finally, and perhaps the most important, first, preserving the democracy and human rights in the city, in all scopes, in all lines, in all political issues. Second, preserving the self-government. We are very, very European citizens, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to preserve our self-government. Also preserving the transsectoral governance, improving the dialogues between the different sectors and also the common projects between us. Also considering that the city has to be in the world, so we have to develop more the city diplomacy, considering that we are in a city in a world of urban cities. And the problem is that we are very little. But also the little things have the possibility to be big. The problem is in what way and in what manner and with what kind of people. So, what about future in Bilbao? Now we have a very special place. I'm not very in favor of this kind of centralized point of view in one corner of the city. All time I'm trying to undertaking that the equilibrium is the best issue that we have to develop. But in this case, in Bilbao, we have had a declining industrial area that was the double that the place that the Guggenheim Museum was. Plenty of industries, companies, and economic activities that have disappeared. And now we have opened this one, becoming an island. In joking, we say that it's our Manhattan Island. Okay, but the main issue, the main reason because it has been open is because an ecological reason. Do you remember that in 1983, the floods destroyed all the banks of the river and all activities that were there? And this is one of the solutions that we have found in these 40 years, trying to reduce, trying to improve the resilient city, trying to reduce the impact of possible floods in the river. So it's now a question of attractiveness for people coming from outside. That island can be solved better than if it's only in a peninsula. No, it's because we think that it's better for the ecological dimension of the city. But also, the first action has been to preserve the 500 people that they live here from the origin of the neighborhood. And we have recuperated all the houses, but knowing a gentrification process, no, leaving the people there. The people that were living there, now they are going to live in the new project. So they are going to improve the quality of life with new people that are going to come, with new activities, with new so and so. Also, in the 30, 40 years that the project is going to be occupied in the history of Bilbao, the as meanwhile has been one of the main concepts that we have included. As meanwhile means that there are a lot of cultural initiatives that are occupying the old industries with culture, performances, little museums, popular activities, social initiatives, and so. So also the social house with different systems of social rent and so for young people and so. Also the technological park, but inside of the city. Other kind of culture industries inside. So, and also recuperating all the banks of the river to join to the rest of the banks of the river that have been recuperated these 40 years. So, thank you very much.